Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. All together, please. Om Jnana Timarandasya Ganandana Salakaya Chakshuron Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yukta Padakamalang Shri Gurun Vaishnavangsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sarvadutam Prijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padang Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha He Krishna Karana Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapcha Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavanishwari Vrishabhana Sudadevi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Patitanam Pavnebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. So reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary, His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. Chapter 2, contents of the Gita summarized. Today is text number 22, correct? Yeah, very famous verse this. Please repeat. Vasamshi Janani Yata Vihaya Navani Grinati Naro Parani Tata Sharirani Vihaya Jinani Anyani Samyati Navani Dehi Vasamsi Jirnani Yata Vihaya Navani Grinati Naro Parani Tata Sharirani Vihaya Jinani Anyani Samyati Nivani Dehi Vasamsi Jenani Yatha Vihaya Navani Grinati Naro Parani Tata Sharirani Vihaya Jinani Anyani Samyati Nivani Dehi Vasamsi Jernani Yatha Vihaya Navani Grinati Naro Parani Tata Sharirani Vihaya Jinani Anyani Samyati Navani Dehi. Vasamsi Jernani Vithaya Vidhani Navani Grinati Naro Parani Tata Sharirani Vihaya Jinani Anyani Samyati Nivani Dehi Vasamsi Jernani Yatha Vihaya Navani Grihati Naro Parani Tata Sharirani Vihaya Jinani Amyani samyati nirvani dehi. Vasamsi jirnani vihaya jani. Navani grinati naro parani. Tata sharirani vihaya jirnani. Anyani samyati nirvani dehi. Vasamsi jirnani vihaya vidhani. Navani grinati naro parani. Tata sharirani vihaya janani. Amyani samyati nirvani dehi. Please repeat. Vasamsi, garments. Jirnani, old and worn out. Yata, just as. Vihaya, giving up. Nirvani, new garments. Grinati, does accept. Nara, a man. Aparani, others. Tata, in the same way. Sharirani, bodies. Vihaya, giving up. Jirnani, old and useless. Anyani, different. Samyati, verily accepts. Navani, new sets. Dehi, the embodied. Translation, Srila Prabhupada. As a person puts on new garments, giving up old ones, the soul similarly accepts new material bodies, giving up the old and useless ones. Please repeat. As a person puts on new garments, giving up old ones, the soul similarly accepts new material bodies, giving up the old and useless ones. Purport Srila Prabhupada. Change of body by the atomic individual soul is an accepted fact. Even the modern scientists do not believe in the existence of the soul, but at the same time cannot explain the source of energy from the heart. Even the modern scientists who do not believe in the existence of the soul, but at the same time cannot explain the source of energy from the heart. This is very bad English, huh? Needs a good editor. Have to accept continuous. Even the modern scientists who do not believe in the existence of the soul, but at the same time cannot explain the source of energy from the heart, have to accept continuous changes of body which appear from childhood to boyhood and from boyhood to youth and again from youth to old age. From old age the change is transferred to another body. This has already been explained in a previous verse, 213. Transference of the atomic individual soul to another body is made possible by the grace of the Supersoul. The Supersoul fulfills the desire of the atomic soul as one friend fulfills the desire of another. The Vedas, like the Mundaka Upanishad, as well as the Svatasvara Upanishad, compare the soul and the Supersoul to two different friendly birds sitting on the same tree. One of the birds, the individual atomic soul, is eating the fruit of the tree. And the other bird, Krishna, is simply watching his friend. Of these two birds, although they are the same in quality, one is captivated by the fruits of the material tree, while the other is simply witnessing the activities of his friend. Krishna is the witnessing bird, and Arjuna is the eating bird. Although they are friends, one is still the master and the other is a servant. Forgetfulness of this relationship by the atomic soul is the cause of one's changing his position from one tree to another, or from one body to another. The jiva soul is struggling very hard on the tree of the material body, but as soon as he agrees to accept the other bird as the supreme spiritual master, as Arjuna agreed to do by voluntary surrender unto Krishna for instruction, the subordinate bird immediately becomes free from all lamentations. Both the Mandukya Upanishad 3.1.2 and Svetasvara Upanishad 4.7 confirm this. Samanye vrikshe purusho nimagno nishchaya sauchati muja manaha justam yata pashyati anyam isham asya mahimanam iti vita shokaha. Although the two birds are in the same tree, the eating bird is fully engrossed with anxiety and moroseness as the enjoyer of the fruits of the tree. But in the same way or other, he turns his face to his friend, the Lord, and knows his glories. At once the suffering bird but if in some way or other he turns his face to his friend, the Lord, and knows his glories, at once the suffering bird becomes free from all anxieties. Arjuna has now turned his face towards his eternal friend Krishna and is understanding the Bhagavad Gita from him. And thus, hearing from Krishna, he can understand the supreme glories of the Lord and be free from lamentation. Arjuna is advised herewith by the Lord not to lament for the bodily change of his old grandfather and his teacher. He should rather be happy to kill their bodies in the righteous fight, so that they may be cleansed at once of all reactions from various bodily activities. One who lays down his life on the sacrificial altar or in the proper battlefield is at once cleansed of bodily reactions and promoted to a higher status of life. So there was no cause for Arjuna's lamentation. Makam karochi vachalam pangam laite girim yad kripa tamam bande Shri Guru nidatarinam vasamsi jernani yata vihaya nirvani grinati naroparani tata sharirani vihaya jinani anyani samyati nirvani dehi. As a person puts on new garments, giving up old ones, the soul similarly accepts new material bodies, giving up the old and useless ones. So, this verse is very poetic, is it not? Vasamsi jernani vihaya. It's very melodic. So, of course, it's a very famous verse. Changing body exhibits we have, right? We show a young boy and then a teenager, then a mature man and then an old man. So of course, you're all very familiar with this, that the body is changing but the soul is eternal. So this is Krishna starting to instruct Arjuna. And this is the key point in spiritual knowledge, that we're not the material body. As Prabhupada points out in the purport, Arjuna was lamenting, oh, I've got to fight, I've got to kill my grandfather, he mentioned. That is Bhishma Dev. He was a great soul, one of the 8 Vasus. The 8 Vasus are there. They have stations in the Swargalok. Bhishma is the one that controls the element of water. You can look it up in the Puranas. He's a very powerful person who came down for Krishna's Leela. So he found himself on the other side of the battlefield. And Arjuna, as Kshatriya, he has to perform his duty, but he doesn't want to perform it by killing his respected grandfather. And then his teacher, Prabhupada mentioned, that's Dronacharya. He was his Astra Guru. taught him so many weapons, how to perform the austerity and then get the weapon from different devatas. So those people, of course, Arjuna, Pandu, their father, he died early, right? So they were brought up under the shelter of Bhishma. Bhishma's like a father to them. So now they're faced with having to fight with the father. So it's very understandable. And then the teacher, he's also another father. The teacher is giving so much knowledge in weaponry, but then the student has to turn his weapons on the teacher. So this is a very lamentable situation. But Krishna introduces the idea that Arjuna, you've got your duty to perform. That's the first point. But then you should perform it as an offering to Vishnu. That's karma yoga. But then ultimately, you should just surrender to me, Arjuna, in devotion. That's bhakti yoga. So Krishna goes through all these things. Fourth chapter, he goes into Gyan, knowledge, all to reinforce Arjuna in his duty and his devotion to the Supreme Lord. But Arjuna is not still in a condition of lamentation. So the difference between Arjuna before and after, refusing to fight and ready to fight, is the knowledge. So we chant many times, Om Jnana Timirandasya. My spiritual master has opened my darkened eyes with the lamp of knowledge, spiritual knowledge. So in the material world there's a sun and it's lighting up the universe, but the universe is a dark place because of the Maya Shakti, and only the spiritual knowledge can light up the material world properly. Because the darkness is not just external, but it is within the soul. And the darkness starts as Prabhupada points out there in the purport, that the individual soul has forgotten his relationship with the Supreme Lord. So he's thinking, I'm just an entity in this world, and he's creating so many philosophies and ideas to explain his perception, his realization of the world. So of course, atak Shri Krishna namadi na bhavad grayam indrayai. That yes, through using the mind and body and intelligence to analyze your experience, you may get some conclusions, but you can never come to the final point, because the final point, the Supreme Lord, is beyond the range of your mind and senses and your soul. Without His grace, you cannot realize Him. So, Arjuna, though, is acting in a way not to gain the grace of Krishna, because the Vedic prescriptions, performing duty and so on, and Gyan and Karma Yoga and Bhakti Yoga, these are the prescriptions of the Supreme Lord. And it is through performing those activities that one gains the grace of the Supreme Lord. If we want to become enlightened, yes, we need the grace of Krishna. But how to get the grace is the next question. And that is to follow His instructions. Because we have within the soul the capacity to realize Krishna in truth, that Vadarshi. Krishna has three aspects: the Brahman effulgence, Brahmajyoti, his body. He has the super soul, as Prabhupada mentions here. The super soul is expanded from Vishnu, ultimately Krishna, into the material world. He's supervising all the living entities, their karma, their desire in the material world. But he also enlightens the soul if the soul wants to get out of the bounds of karma and the bounds of the material world. So he is, as Krishna, Prabhupada explained in the purport, that Krishna is like the wish-fulfilling tree. He fulfills the desires of all the living entities. But the ignorant soul thinks that through my body, through my mind, through my efforts, I am achieving my goals. And this is his ignorance. He doesn't understand matak smitir jnanam apohanam cha sutre mani gana iva. He doesn't understand that everything is resting upon the Supreme Lord. All his inspiration, all his ideas, all his skills, these are bequeathed. They're given to him by the Supreme Lord. So he's in this position where he's getting everything from the Supreme Lord, but not recognizing the Supreme Lord. That is illusion. That is the Maya Shakti. So how to come out of that Maya Shakti? This is done by knowledge, spiritual knowledge. At the beginning, to gain spiritual knowledge is very important. So in this section, Krishna is giving basic spiritual knowledge. And that is to distinguish between matter and spirit. In the Vedas, Vedanta, there's explanation of different levels of consciousness that the soul can attain. First one is Annamoya. Anna means grain. Parani Anna Sambhavat. Grains are grown by rain. Grain, food. So when the child, a human child or any other child, they are just Annamoya. They just want to eat. If you put anything to a child, you'll start sucking your thumb or a toffee or anything. So he's conscious of the external world in terms of food. Then the next level, the child develops quickly, and other animals also, they come to what's called pranamoya, level of consciousness. So here, they're not just conscious of the necessity of food, but they also understand the necessity of survival. Prana means energy. You've heard of pranayam. Well, prana is the energy generated by the conjunction of the soul, the super soul, with the material energy. So prana in this context means life. We have certain energy manifested in the material world. So when the soul develops a little more in consciousness, he realizes that I am existing, it's a necessity, it's something I want to continue, but I can also non-exist. The child, when he's just born, you can put him next to a tiger and he'll not be terrified because he's just Annamoya. He'll start licking the tiger's claws, thinking, can I eat this? But when he's a month or two older, then he'll realize that the tiger is a danger. It can finish my prana, my life symptoms, my energy. So therefore he becomes scared of the tiger. Or he becomes scared of the monkeys. You see the children, right, going to school. They say, oh, monkey, and then they walk with you past the monkey. So this is pranamoya. They're scared of life and death. They realize this is a new element in the consciousness, other than just food for survival. But there are other entities that may kill me, so I have to be a bit clever to survive. And then, next level, the consciousness, the child, in this example, human being, comes to manamoy. So usually the animals are just anamoy and pranamoy. They just want food and they want to survive. Once on the internet, I read an article and it was by an interesting fellow. He's like a horse whisperer. You know what a horse whisperer is? He's actually employed by stables in England and America, and he has the ability to whisper or talk with the horse. He can communicate. And sometimes he talks with the horses, and the horses tell them, oh, this rider's a bit rough, my stirrups are a bit tight. And he communicates to the owners what the horses think. But then one interesting part of the article was that he was commenting on the mentality of the horses, and he said sometimes I ask them philosophical questions like, what's the meaning of life? And the horse says something, well, I wish I had an apple. So I was reading the article and I was thinking, they just on the Anamoya and Pranamoya platform. You see, the next platform is Manamoya. That's mental platform, Mana or Jnanamoya, where you're trying to come to conclusions about food and survival and what is the meaning of life. For example, in the human life, young people, they get together and they discuss, right? What do you think about this? Is communism good, capitalism, or socialism, this political party, religion? What do you think about this? The Manamoy, Manorathena. This is called the chariot of the mind. So they're trying to analyze the world and understand it. So animals don't do that. They think that the meaning of life is to eat apples. They don't analyze, is there a God, is there a purpose to life other than eating and surviving? Anamoya and Pranamoya. But the human being has the capacity to analyze and come to conclusions. So Arjuna was on this platform. He's thinking, well, if I kill these people, that's not good, it's sinful. And then they're leaders of society. Society will break down without their example. The women won't be protected. Bad offspring will be born. He was giving so many Manamoya examples. His own analysis, Manorathena. Now the trouble with the mind is that when you're on the mental platform, you change your opinion, right? So you may think about communism is a good idea when you're 18, but then you read about what happens in communists under the leaders, and then you think it's a bad thing. Then you may become an anarchist. We don't need a government at all, and so on and so forth. So mind is flickering. Chanchila, Himana Krishna, Arjuna says. Yes, so one thing you may, on the Manamoya, you may believe in this and then you believe in that the next moment or in the next day. So Krishna, and this is the human condition, to come to Manamoya naturally. But the next platform of consciousness is Vijnanamoya. Vijnan, often different definitions of Jnana and Vijnan, knowledge and realization, or general knowledge and specific knowledge of one's spiritual relationship. But in this context, Vijnanamoya means the ability to distinguish between matter and spirit. So unless one is coming to that understanding, his Manamoya endeavors, his philosophical speculation, his contemplation, is not bearing fruit, because he's still coming within the material sphere and coming to material conclusions. But if he can meet a spiritual master, a sadhu, somebody possessed of knowledge, like Arjuna is asking Krishna and he's getting the grace of Krishna, then that spiritual master, first job is to say, actually, beyond this material world and all the philosophies and interpretations of it, there is a transcendental platform, that there is two energies involved. There is matter and there is spirit. And spirit is eternal and matter is temporary. Spirit is conscious, self-aware, whereas matter is unconscious, right? Material energy. Spirit can taste ananda, happiness and distress in the material world. In the spiritual world there's just ananda. But in the material world he can experience distress. And then spirit is naturally the real identity of the soul, but in the material world he's identifying with the body, he's in ignorance, so his identity is mistaken, false ego. So this is in reference to the soul. And then of course the spiritual energy is conscious and ever expanding, the material energy is unconscious and restricted and in flux. So starting from the point of the soul, Krishna is now introducing Vijnanamoy. And that means to distinguish, in this context, between matter and spirit. Right? So that's the fourth level of consciousness. And so human beings are meant for that. And you all, of course, you're devotees, so you understand that there's a difference between matter and spirit. Now, of course, the Voidists or some Buddhist schools think that matter is just some kind of condensed consciousness, because that's materialism in another form. That matter is the cause of spirit. All right? This is what the atheistic scientists nowadays, they think that matter, when it reaches a certain complexity, creates spirit. So they don't really see any distinguishment between consciousness and matter. But Krishna, and throughout the Vedas, it makes this very clear point, that matter and spirit are different energies. And that we are a combination of both. We're the spirit soul stuck inside a material body. That's the problem. So we're identifying with the body, and mukti is to identify with the soul, not the body. Mukti, what's that verse? Muktir hitavan yata rupam swarupena avivastiti. To be situated in your spiritual understanding, identity, that is liberation, to understand your soul. So Krishna is introducing that to Arjuna. And so that means that, and the first point is, like here, Krishna is giving that example, that we change the body, but we're the same person, right? You're all devotees, you've heard this a dozen times, maybe 200 times. But we are considering that I am the material body, but actually we're the soul. So that soul we can divine, if you like. We can find out that nature. Krishna is giving this example. Like, we have all been 5 years old. We've all been 10 years old. We've all been 20, 30. And we know that I'm the same person now as when I was learning to ride my bicycle. Right? We have the same sense of self. So we're not only conscious, but we also have a sense of identity. So that's not fully developed in the material platform, because we're identifying with the body. But if we learn to identify with Krishna and spirit, then we can realize the next stage of consciousness. And that is Anandamoya. When we understand that matter and spirit are two different energies, and we learn to distinguish between them, and therefore we go to the spiritual side, we think, oh, that's right, matter is temporary, ignorant, and so on, and unsatisfactory. The Ananda is very minimal. Therefore, I should go to the spiritual side, where there is unmixed Anand, all right? Where there is not a change of body, where the identity is eternal. Where pranamoy, we're not under threat in the spiritual world. In the material world, everyone is feeling anxiety because my life is threatened. And then we're also in anxiety for anamoy, right? For food, right? People think. And the animals also, they get up in the morning and search for food. Of course, human beings make it very difficult. We have to get a job, pay taxman, and so on. But we're in anxiety for food. We're in anxiety for survival. We have mental conditions. But we also, they're satisfied when we understand Vijnanamoy, matter and spirit are different, and I'm spiritual. And then we come to Anandamoy, when we concentrate on spirit and our real nature is awoken. Just like that sloka. Nitya Siddha Krishna Prem Sadhakavanai Shravanadi Sudachitte Karide Udai. So we have that as our mistake. That we're trying to enjoy in the material world instead of the spiritual platform. And the problem is, yes, this is the sloka actually. This is another thing, but I happen to have it with me. This jiva feels bliss because of contact with the Supreme Blissful, Krishna. But he himself has a blissful nature. This is one sloka. Madhya 21:05. Kriti sadyat bhavad sadhya bhava sa sadhayana bida nitya siddhasya bhavasya prakrityam rida sadyata. When transcendental devotional service by which love for Krishna is attained is executed by the senses, it is called sadhana bhakti. So sadhana bhakti means we serve Krishna through the senses, or regulative discharge of devotional service. Such devotion eternally exists within the heart of every living entity. The awakening of this eternal devotion is the potentiality of devotional service in practice. So Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu Smaranam Pada Sevanam, that wakes up the Anandamoy, because it wakes up our attachment, our relationship with Krishna. Here's the purport. It's a very short purport. This verse is found in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 122. Because living entities are minute, atomic part and parcels of the Lord, devotional service is already present within them in a dormant condition. Devotional service begins with Shravanam Kirtanam, hearing and chanting. When a man is sleeping, he can be awakened by sound vibration. Right? When we put the clock on for going to Mangalati or Guru Puja. Therefore, every conditioned soul should be given the chance to hear the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra chanted by a pure Vaishnava. One who hears the Hare Krishna mantra thus vibrated is awakened to spiritual consciousness or Krishna consciousness. In this way, one's mind is gradually purified, as stated by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Chaitadapana. When the mind is purified, the senses are also purified. Instead of using the senses for sense gratification, the awakened devotee employs the senses in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. This is the process by which dormant love for Krishna is awakened. So that verse actually, what did I say? Madhya Lila 205. That is just before the other famous word, Nitya Siddha Krishna Prem. I don't have that one with me. But we all know that one, right? Nitya Siddha Krishna Prem Sadhakavanai Shravanadi Sudachitekari Deoda. It's practically the same point, that we have that Krishna Prem in the heart. And it is woken up by chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare. However, that should be chanted in knowledge. You see, because I remember when I was Manamoy, I lived in India actually after college. I was living in India in the south. I was living and I was trying to figure out what the world was. I was living in a forest actually, and if you remember your own life when you were about late teens, you're thinking about what is life. So I was thinking, I was living in a little hut by a waterhole, and I was thinking, ants used to come, and I was thinking, how do the ants know where the food is? They come. So my Manamoya idea was that somehow they're in harmony with the universe, right? And somehow the universe is guiding them. So therefore, if I want to, I should be in harmony with the universe. So these are Manamoya ideas. You're analyzing your life. You're coming to some conclusion it's semi-correct, right? You should be in harmony with the universe. Nobody will say that's a bad idea. But what does that harmony mean? And what is the universe? So it's incomplete and unsatisfactory. So all these philosophies of the world, they are like that. Globalism, communism, atheism, anarchy, and this. Everyone is coming up with their own philosopher. Some people, they write it in a book and it gets taken in universities and analyzed for hundreds of years, but it is just concoction. And it may have some semblance of truth. Just like I was thinking, the ant is in harmony with the universe, so it's finding the grain of sand 100 yards from its anthole. So I can also survive that by becoming in harmony with the universe. But of course, like I say, what is the universe and what is being in harmony with the universe? So one question leads to the other. But our declaration to the world is that the Vedic literature is the actual perfect explanation. Right? This is what Krishna is giving Arjuna. And so we present this knowledge to the world and we say, take it or leave it. You want to understand your life, reality? Then here's the first point. You're not the body. You're an eternal soul. Now you can't come to that conclusion on your own, sitting under a tree and so on and so forth. You may come to a very elaborate philosophy and write it down and preach it to some followers and so on, or communism or capitalism, globalism, so many isms, materialism, reductionism. You could probably fill a dictionary with all these ideas. But the real point is that if you want to know the truth, you should go to somebody who knows the truth, right? Now, of course, the demoniac will say it's all relative. There is no truth. We all make our own truth. But there are absolutes. For example, everyone dies. Everyone needs time. Everyone is absolutely dependent on time. So what is the origin? What is the support of that absolute thing, that principle that exists independent of us? So that indicates that there is an absolute truth, abhigya swarat, that is independent of our relative considerations and understandings. So Krishna, is that absolute truth, declared in the Vedas. Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. So Krishna now is giving this very impressive knowledge to Arjuna. And that knowledge takes him from Manamoy to Vijnanamoy. He sees that I'm spirit soul. And as Prabhupada expounds in the purport, I may have to kill Bhishma, I may have to kill Dronacharya. It's my duty to do so, but they don't die. And Prabhupada gives an argument here that rather their bodies are old, so they may have some reactions, karmic reactions, but if they die on the battlefield, then they'll be purified. So it's actually an advantage. Of course, this is not an advantage to the person being killed. Generally, people protest. And of course, Shastra declares that we should always extend our life. We shouldn't be anxious to die, or we shouldn't certainly commit suicide. But we should understand. And if you understand I'm an eternal spirit soul, then all your anamoy and pranamoy and your manamoy, right? Your worries about food, your worries about existence, pranamoy, your worries, your philosophy, they all become cleared up, right? You become satisfied within your mind because you realize Krishna, as with this sloka, Nityasiddha Krishnasya, that we have our spiritual understanding in dormant condition. Our identity is in dormant condition. But it awakens by chanting Hare Krishna mantra. And then we don't worry. The mind is satisfied. We're not changing our idea. Like, the politicians, vote for this party, then vote for this party, this election. And I'm thinking, I don't like that guy. He's overtaxing the rickshaw wallahs. I'm going to vote for him. And we have I'm going to vote. So, but devotee, right? You're devotees, but sometimes we don't realize that most devotees are not worried about food, right? They're not worried about survival, unless the temple president has given them a hard time. And they're not speculating about reality. By grace of Krishna, Guru, they understand I'm an eternal soul. And they understand Vijnanamoy, I'm not this body. And they also get a touch of Anandamoy by chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So in the same way that devotees become free of these anxieties and their mind become fixed by spiritual knowledge, this is what Arjuna's understanding. You see, Krishna is starting with this point. Arjuna, why are you worried about all these things? Because the soul is eternal. So these aren't considerations. Your consideration should be, am I acting correctly? So that is the burden of human life, if you like. The animals, they act according to their anamoy and pranamoy. But the human being is sometimes, what is the best course of action? So therefore they debate and they have different ideas. But here is the solution. Instead of contemplating what is my idea, we should try to understand what is the reality presented in the Vedas, and we will find it to be the reality. And it all starts with this point, that there is matter, yes, but there is also spirit. And we belong to the spiritual side. And our interest then is to realize spirit, not matter. So devotees are not really interested in politics. They may keep an eye on this and that, and they may understand it. It's all karma. They're really interested in realizing the soul. By chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram. So that, with knowledge, takes us to the blissful spiritual platform, step by step. So we'll finish on this point. Any question? Yes?
This verse was utilized in a Hindi film.
Huh?
This verse is a very famous verse.
Yes.
This verse was utilized in a Hindi film, in which
It was in a Hindi film, this verse.
I think 30 to 40 years back,
Really?
in which this Amitabh Bachchan was playing a role of a dacoit, etc.
He was playing the role of a
Role of dacoit.
fighter.
Dacoit.
Oh, a dacoit.
Dacoit. And he was avoided the death sentence.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah? So this actor was... Yeah.
I do not know the name of that film. He was awarded the death sentence.
The dacoit was.
Dacoit. And while he was in the jail, actually, his mother came to meet him, actually. And that mother was weeping, actually, for his life, actually. Then Amitabh Bachchan asked his mother to recite that verse, actually, this was verse, actually. That verse was recited, and we want to just actually so he should not weep on this point that I am leaving the body, I am the soul, actually, not the body, actually. It was explained in that.
So, then what happened next?
What happened then? Actually, the film was over, actually.
Overacting happened. Yes, usually the Hindi movies, right? I've not had the pleasure of watching them, but if you look, there's always a hero, right? And he has a bandage on his head in the the posters, and he's the hero, and he's conquering all the troubles, the dacoits, the politicians, the rent collectors. So that everyone goes to the movie and they think, yeah, Amitabh Bachchan, he's been put to death, but he's a winner, just like me. I'm a hero, surrounded by corruption, but... Huh? So... But anyway, that verse is there, and actually that is a glory of India, actually, that is in a movie, but generally Indian people have got that conception, have they not? Right? That we're not the body, we're the soul. They may not know very much about the soul, and they may think in this way or that, but they have some conception that I'm not the body. But the thing is, we have to progress from that, that's Vijnanamoy, to Anandamoy. We have to be by sadhana bhakti. Yeah, go on. You're going to say?
In that film, actually, his mother was shown as a Krishna devotee.
She was a Krishna devotee.
And she used to recite this verse every day.
Daily?
Daily. So that's
in the movie?
In the movie. That's why that Amitabh Bachchan, in the role of a dacoit, when he was in the jail, he asked her mother to recite that verse, because he was awarded the death punishment.
Yes, well, that's it. If he's a dacoit doing bad things, he should also know that what goes around comes around, the law of karma. That's also another thing in India, right? The law of karma. People understand karma generally, don't they? They have an understanding. Therefore, you see, sometimes the Indian people, they may have a raging argument, right? But they very rarely come to blows. Have you noticed in the marketplace sometimes? They shout and roar, your rickshaw's in the way. They're 2 inches. They can hear each other in the next field, but they're 2 inches apart. But they, you know what I mean? But generally they don't start punching each other, right? Because the law of karma is a very strong police force, isn't it? You think, well, if I start punching him, he's going to punch in me, and if I break his jaw in the future, I'll get my jaw broken, and right? So they just keep shouting at each other until everyone stands around and becomes bored and said, koi baat nahi, sab theek hoga. So this is the potency of spiritual knowledge in action, is it not, right? If you understand that there's reaction to my activities, you naturally start to become a little careful. And if you think that I'm not the body, then death, which is the big, the big shadow, right, becomes less threatening, you see. So, yes. So we want, this is, you see, this you can understand. Now these concepts, like this, when I was a young lad, I didn't know anything, in the West. It was, now everyone knows guru, mantra, the idea you're not the body, you're a soul, the soul is... Those ideas are spreading in society. So that will have a very powerful effect on society, you see. Because it's introducing very powerful conceptions to the human being. And it affects behavior. You see, if you're an atheist, you think, well, this life, so beg, borrow or steal and get money and enjoy, right? And then to hell with everything, because we die and that's the end of it. So that means, anything goes, right? And so society is going to hell with such ideas. That you can just be a thief, get money and steal it and then enjoy, and then when you die, never mind. And then some religions say, you can do anything and you've been saved by joining this religion and believing in this, and you don't have to do anything. You just believe in these unreasonable ideas and you'll be saved. So but actually when you study the Bhagavad Gita, it's very satisfying to the intelligence. So there's not only Shastra, but there's also Nyaya Prashtan. It's logical, it's sensible, you can see the world. So this is why Prabhupada emphasized book distribution, preaching in the sense of explaining the philosophy. This can change society, because people's minds become changed by knowledge, you see. Just like Arjuna, he was in this material confusion, lamentation, but as soon as he had some spiritual knowledge, he came to his true self. So that is what we're doing with human society on a general basis. Give knowledge out and let that knowledge act. Just like when I was, to use myself as an example, I remember it was in India. I heard, we used to sit round a campfire, and there was this American girl, I always remember, and she was talking about the law of karma. What you do comes back to you. So that was the first time I heard the law of karma. So at the time, look at the campfire and, But then I started thinking about this idea that action and reaction. And just by, after a few days, it pops back into your mind, and you start to think, that's very interesting idea. That it seems very reasonable. So Vedic knowledge is scriptural, but it's also, if you use your intelligence, buddhi yogam, then it's very reasonable and it's very satisfying. So I started to see, I was wandering around India later on, and this man is, outside the temple with his legs bent or something, he's a beggar. And I could see, this is because of his karma. But that doesn't mean to say we shouldn't be compassionate. Compassion means to give that knowledge, you see. by which they come out of their material identification, whereas a cripple or a dacoit or a rich man, whatever, and they understand, I'm not this body, I'm spirit. And once that idea gets in your head, yeah, I'm not the body. I forget when I first heard that idea. I'll have to go through the memory bank. But when you first hear, I'm not the body, I'm soul, that's very powerful, right? Is it not? Do you remember when you first heard that idea? Cast your mind back. There must be a starting point, right? So you think, I'm not the body. What does that mean? I'm not the body. I'm a soul. Oh, the soul is two energies, you see. So once you start that idea, then it makes your whole life different, does it not? If I'm not the body, that I'm the soul, then I should live a spiritual life. Right? So there's nothing more, so that ideas are more powerful, right? That's why the pen is mightier than the sword, right? So actually, this is a concrete example. Arjuna wasn't ready to fight with his sword, but Krishna gave him some words and he was ready. So you cannot underestimate the power of spiritual knowledge when it's presented as it is, as Prabhupada said. Okay, any other points, contributions? All right, thank you all very much.